This Flutter app has 7 variations of the slide transition in Flutter. By the end of this tutorial, you will know how to implement each one of them. Let's code this app from scratch. We start off with an empty VS Code window. The first thing we'll do is open the folder that we have created specifically for this project. Next, we will open our terminal and use the Flutter create demo app command to create a new Flutter project. Next, we will close this terminal and head over to our main.file. Here, we will change the title of the app, remove the comments in this code, and remove some of the code so that we are left with only a blank scaffold. Next, we will change the device to Chrome so that we're able to run this app on the browser. After that, we will create a new folder we will call images, which is where we're going to put the images we are going to use in this project. Next, we will open up the file explorer, copy the images we need from our collection of images, and paste them in this new folder. Next, we will go to our pubspec.yaml file and scroll down to our assets section. Here, we will uncomment this code and remove the extra text so that we remain with just a line pointing to the images folder. Let's close this terminal and go back to our main.file to start writing our code. We are going to start by creating a custom class for displaying our images in cards. Since we are displaying quite a number of images, it is good practice to create a class which we will instantiate each time we want to display an image instead of having to create a custom card for each image. This class will have 2 required arguments, the first being an image path, which is the path to the image we are going to use, and the second is the image text, which will appear as a caption on top of our image. Inside the build method of this class, we will return a card whose child will be a sized box with a width of 200 pixels and a height of 80 pixels. The child of this sized box will be a stack whose first child will be the image itself. For the image, we will use a sized box with a width of 200, and the child will be an image.asset whose path will be the image path argument, and we will have a fit property which will be boxFit.cover so that the image fills up the entire sized box. The second child of this stack will be the caption. For the caption, we will use an align widget to align the caption to the bottom right, and the child of this align widget will be a text widget which will display the image text argument, and to this we will apply a text style to set the color of the text to white and give it a shadow which will be black in color so that it contrasts against the image behind it. Let's now move on to the main layout of the app. We are going to add a ticker provider state mixin to the homepage state class so that our slide transitions can have a time reference. Then we will create our variables, which will be 3 booleans, the first being show location details, then show popular animals, and finally show popular birds, all of which will be false by default. Next, we will add a background color to our scaffold, which will be yellow with a shade of 100. Next, inside the body property of the scaffold, we will create a list view because we want the contents of our app to be scrollable. At the top of this list view, we will have our title section, which will be a column. The children of this column will be first a sized box for spacing, then a text widget that says all about, then a sized box for spacing, then another text widget that says Masai Mara with a text style to increase its font size and font weight, and finally a sized box for spacing. Next, let's create our location details section where we will use a stateful builder so that when we toggle between showing and hiding the location details, only this section updates. This stateful builder will return a column. At the top of this column, we will have an elevated button for toggling between showing and hiding location details. We will apply a button style to it to set the background color to white and the foreground color to black, and its onPressed property will have a setState function that flips the value of the show location details boolean. The child of this elevated button will be a row whose main axis size will be set to minimum, and the children of this row will be first a text widget that says location details, and then an icon which, if show location details is false, will be an arrow drop down, otherwise it will be an arrow drop up. Let's save this for formatting and then move on to our location details slide transition. Here we will use an if statement to only show the slide transition if show location details is true. In the position property of the slide transition, we are going to use a twin to give us a smooth interpolation between the beginning point of our transition and the end point. The beginning position will be a point to the left whose distance will be half the width of the slide transition's child, and the end position will be where the slide transition's child should appear naturally. We are going to animate this twin using a curved animation. The curve of this curved animation will be an ease in, out, and then back, and the parent of this curved animation will be an animation controller. We will set the vsync of this animation controller to this because we added the ticker provider state mixin animation to the myHomepage state class, and we will set the duration of this animation controller to 1000 milliseconds. Next, we will call forward on this animation controller so that it runs only once. The child of this slide transition will be a card widget whose child will be a sized box with a width of 220 pixels, and the child of this sized box will be a column. Inside this column, we will start with a sized box for spacing, then a row with 2 text widgets to give us the country information, then a sized box for spacing, then a row with 2 text widgets to give us the county information, then a sized box for spacing, then a row with 2 text widgets to give us the distance from capital information, and finally a sized box for spacing. After this stateful builder for the location details section, we will add a sized box for spacing, then move on to the popular animals section. Here we will have a stateful builder that returns a column. At the top of this column, we will have an elevated button for toggling between showing and hiding the popular animals. We are going to apply a button style to it to set its background color to white, its foreground color to black, and in its onPressed property, we are going to use a setState function to flip the value of the show popular animals boolean. The child of this elevated button will be a row whose main axis size will be set to minimum, and its children will be first a text widget that says popular animals and then an icon which, if show popular animals is false, will be arrow drop down, otherwise it will be arrow drop up. Let's save for formatting, then move on to the slide transition for the first popular animal. We will show this slide transition if show popular animals is true. For the position property, we will use a tween where the begin point will be off to the left and the end point will be at the 0 position. We will animate this tween using a curved animation where the curve will be fast ease in to slow ease out. The parent will be an animation controller whose vsync will be set to this, and the duration will be 500 milliseconds. Then we will call forward on this animation controller. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card where the image path will be the path to the lion's image and the image text will be lion. Next, we move on to the second popular animal slide transition, which we will only show if show popular animals is true. For the position property, we will begin off to the right and end at the 0 position. We will animate this position using an ease in curve, set the duration to 1000 milliseconds and call forward so that it runs once. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card, which will show our leopard image and the image text will be leopard. Let's save this for formatting, then move on to our third popular animal slide transition, which will only be shown if show popular animals is true. The position will begin off to the left and end at the 0 position. We will animate this position using a linear curve, set the duration to 1500 milliseconds and call forward so that this animation runs only once. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card, which shows us our rhino image with the image text being rhino. After this stateful builder for the popular animals section, we will have a sized box for spacing, then move on to the popular birds section where we will also have a stateful builder. Inside our builder property, we will return a column. At the top of this column, we will have an elevated button for toggling between showing and hiding the popular birds. We will apply a button style to set its background color to white and its foreground color to black, and in its onPressed property, we will use a setState function to flip the value of the show popular birds boolean. The child of this elevated button will be a row whose main axis size will be set to minimum, and its children will be first a text widget that says popular birds and then an icon which, if show popular birds is false, will be arrow drop down, otherwise it will be arrow drop up. After this elevated button, we will have the first popular bird slide transition, which will only be shown if show popular birds is true. Its position will begin off to the top and end at the 0 position. We will animate this position using a decelerate curve, set the duration to 500 milliseconds and call forward. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card for showing us the martial eagle image, and the image text will be martial eagle. Let's move on to the second popular bird slide transition, which will only be shown if show popular birds is true. Its position will begin off to the bottom left and end at the 0 position. We will animate this position using a decelerate curve, set the duration to 1000 milliseconds and call forward. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card, which shows us our ostrich image and the image text will be ostrich. Let's save this for formatting, then move on to our third popular bird slide transition, which will only be shown if show popular birds is true. Its position will begin off to the bottom right and end at the 0 position. We will animate this position using the decelerate curve, set the duration to 1500 milliseconds and call forward. The child of this slide transition will be our custom image card, which will show us the image image of the crane, and the image text will be gray crowned crane. And finally, after the stateful builder for the popular birds section, we will add a blank sized box whose height will be the screen height, and the only function of this sized box is to allow us to scroll the list view and watch our animations. Let's save for formatting, and that's it. We are done writing our code. Let's now run this app to see our final result. Our app has now been built. I'll go ahead and close the inspector tab, close the debug console, and zoom in on our browser window so that we can see our app nicely. Let me resize this window a bit, then scroll up to our code for the location details slide transition. When I click on the location details button, we can see our slide transition in action. Let's move on to the popular animals slide transition code. When I click on the popular animals button, we can see the 3 slide transitions in action. Let me scroll slowly through the code for these 3 slide transitions so that you can have a quick glance at them. Finally, let's scroll down to the code for the popular birds slide transitions. When I click on the popular birds button, you can see the 3 slide transitions in action. Let me scroll slowly through the code for the popular bird slide transitions so that you can have a quick glance at the code. So that's how you build slide transitions in Flutter. If you have enjoyed this video and found value in it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might find it useful as well. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel with the notifications turned on so that you get notified each time I upload a new video.